It's a special Tuesday edition of PFT PM, necessitated by the fact that the Ravens, after 18 years with Coach John Harbaugh, are moving on. This was one of the hot spots we were watching. We've talked about it on PFT Live. We mentioned it during Football Night in America from the Ravens sideline prior to the season-ending game between Baltimore and Pittsburgh. And when you think about it, that missed field goal, that changed everything. We don't know what would have happened after the playoff run. Maybe they would have decided to stay together for another year. But if that field goal is good, the Ravens are currently getting ready to host the Texans on Monday night. They're not thinking about who their next coach is going to be, and John Harbaugh is not in a position where he now will consider what his options are. And in 18 years, more often than not, the Ravens contended. They made the playoffs 12 different times. They won Super Bowl 47, and it was in December of 2012 that John Harbaugh made what was a gutsy decision at the time to move on from Cam Cameron as offensive coordinator and install Jim Caldwell. That fueled the playoff run. That fueled the run to the Super Bowl and ultimately the Super Bowl victory over his brother Jim Harbaugh, who at the time was in only his second season with the 49ers. But even though Harbaugh ultimately won 180 regular season games, he's 15th all-time in regular season coaching wins. The recent years had not lived up to the expectations. When they drafted Lamar Jackson in 2018 and made him the starting quarterback during the season, it became obvious in 2019 that this guy is one of the best players in all of football. He was the MVP that year. The Ravens won the number one overall seed in the AFC, and they lost in the divisional round on a Saturday night to the Tennessee Titans. And since then, there's been this chronic failure to live up to the expectations that having a player like Lamar Jackson naturally will give a team. It culminates in this year's failure to make it to the playoffs. Now, they started 1-5, and remember, the season began with a blown double-digit lead in the fourth quarter against the not the New England Patriots. It started with the Buffalo Bills. More recently, it was a 24-13 lead in the fourth quarter that the Ravens blew to the Patriots on a Sunday night that just continued to grease the skids toward the inevitable exit from the playoffs. And with all that said, as of Sunday, the Ravens were thrilled to be in a position where they had a win-and-in game after all the struggles of the 2025 season. And again, if they had won, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now about John Harbaugh. We'd possibly be having it right now about Mike Tomlin. That's why that last game of the season was so meaningful. The futures of both coaches were hanging in the balance because the loser obviously is out. Here's the reality, though, and this is where Steve Bisciotti, the owner of the Ravens, really had a tough decision to make because there's no guarantee they're going to find somebody as good as Harbaugh this time around. Hell, it's been 18 years since they've done a coaching search, and there's a chance that Harbaugh is going to land somewhere else and instantly improve a team that needs someone like Harbaugh there. He's not being let go because he's a bad coach. It's just time. 18 years makes it time for a change for both sides. The same issues that came up after the Steelers were embarrassed at home by the Buffalo Bills last month apply here. After that much time, and not many coaches have been with the same team for that many years, you just get to a point where it's time for a fresh start for everyone. There are 6 other vacancies out there. How can any of those teams not instantly make contact with John Harbaugh about interviewing for those vacancies? How does he not become the favorite for most of them? DraftKings has betting odds for 5 of the 6 vacancies. I still don't know why the Cardinals aren't on there. That's a different story altogether. But for the 5 that are on there, he's going to go straight to the top. He's going to be in demand. He's going to have his pick of the jobs. And here's the thing to watch. There are teams out there that haven't fired their coaches yet. And maybe they weren't going to. But now that John Harbaugh is available, that's a factor. How's it not a factor? You always have to think, how are we going to do moving forward with the guy we have? How would we do moving forward with the guy we could get? Oh, we can get John Harbaugh? Maybe we make that move. And this is where it gets a little awkward for teams, because if you fire the guy without knowing you can get Harbaugh, you may have a problem. But you've got to go through the full search process. You can't unofficially hire Harbaugh ahead of time. But look, let's not be naive. Plenty of owners know exactly who they're going to hire when they fire the guy they have. And I think that's something that will be playing out. There will be phone calls. There will be conversations. There will be things that happen off the grid that that could lay the foundation for a team that is yet to fire its head coach to make the move. And I'm not going to name names for now. Let's just say, and we know the other hot spots we've been monitoring, let's just say one of those owners is currently on the fence about what to do. May not be on the fence any longer if there's a way to reasonably become confident that John Harbaugh would accept an offer if it were extended for him to become the next coach of that team. He's going to land somewhere if he wants to. Maybe he wants to take a year off. Maybe he wants to do TV. Maybe he just wants to have an opportunity. Remember when Mike McCarthy was let go by the Packers? He took a full year. He put his staff together. He was ready to go when the Cowboys came calling for the 2020 season. Harbaugh may decide to take a very analytical approach. And if he does that, he's going to hover over the hiring cycle for all of the 2026 season. As we start talking about which teams may make a change, he's going to be at the top of the list. Look at this year's class of potential coaches. There really wasn't a guy that just stands out above the rest. Harbaugh now becomes the guy who stands out. Harbaugh becomes the guy that other teams will want. You know, for the Ravens, and we see this from time to time where a team is close, but it's not getting it done. And there's just a level of frustration and there's a sense that it is time. All those factors that surely influence Steve Bisciotti. There's going to be another team out there that says, man, we could do a lot worse than John Harbaugh because we have. How about the Cleveland Browns? Now, look, if I'm John Harbaugh, I don't know that I want to go to Cleveland. Sorry. So I know Jimmy Haslam doesn't like it when we call the Browns dysfunctional. Okay. Do we really need to call them dysfunctional? Who that pays attention to the NFL doesn't know the Browns are dysfunctional? Man, they become functional very quickly if they can convince John Harbaugh to come coach the team. So this is going to make things very interesting moving forward. Where do the Ravens go next for their coach? Where does John Harbaugh go next for his second NFL head coaching job? And one last point here, two last points. Number one, and Chris Sims and I talked about this on PFT Live. For whatever reason, and the reason is that owners want to make splashes when they hire coaches, special teams coordinators never get the consideration they should. Harbaugh was a career special teams coordinator who spent 1 year as a position coach with the Eagles, and that was enough to make him marketable to the Ravens media and fan base as a viable head coach candidate. I think that we should take a look at Harbaugh's success and maybe reconfigure how we view special teams coordinators. Not we, the media, we, the people out there who have to decide whether or not they're going to be excited about a special teams coach becoming the head coach, because Harbaugh has proven that it can work. That's point number one. Here's point number two. They still have something going on with Lamar Jackson. And hey, maybe this decision by Steve Bisciotti is akin to the John Elway, Dan Reeves decision that Pat Bowlen made all those years ago, that they want to salvage the relationship with Lamar Jackson, and that one way to do it is to move on from John Harbaugh, assuming that there really is stuff going on behind the scenes that was creating tension, that was undermining the relationship with Lamar Jackson. They're still going to have an issue when it comes to negotiating a contract with Lamar Jackson. That wasn't John Harbaugh's gig. That's Eric DeCosta, the GM. That's his job to try to do. But maybe if the things that were reported, although they weren't really reported, they showed up in a column as statements of fact from Mike Preston of the Baltimore Sun. If any of that stuff's true, this is an opportunity for the Ravens to find a coach that they believe will, and this isn't a slight on Harbaugh, but maybe a different coach, maybe that clean slate, maybe that fresh start results in a coach who comes in and gets more out of Jackson, if the concerns that were articulated by Mike Preston of the Baltimore Sun are true. So it may be the last gasp opportunity to really harness everything that Lamar Jackson can do and get it to show up when the games are the most significant. I think back to 2019, they were the number one seed again. Out they went. They had the AFC Championship game, hosted against the Chiefs when they were the number one seed a second time. Didn't work out. I think this is a team that has a lot of the right pieces in place and knows how to go out and find talent and knows how to maximize compensatory draft picks and work free agency and be smart about the salary cap and constantly reload. And the team has a knack for getting better on the fly. It looks one way when the season starts. It looks a different way when the season ends. That's a testament to the coaching staff. they're going to want to try to find someone who can come in and push this team over the top. It's not going to be easy to do because there aren't a lot of coaches out there who can do what John Harbaugh has done. And now he's available to anyone who wants him. And I would submit to you that the 6 teams that are looking for coaches will be interested, and there could be more who otherwise were going to stay put with the guys they had. Either way, it's a wrinkle, to say the least, in the early stages of the 2026 offseason. We'll be covering it extensively at ProFootballTalk.com, on PFT Live, and everywhere else I may have my 2 cents to chime in with on anything that's happening as it relates to the Baltimore Ravens and the future of John Harbaugh. Until next time, have a great evening. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.